Kim Anami is a board certified sexologist and host of the Orgasmic Enlightenment podcast. She has propelled millions into higher stratospheres of connection, sensuality, energy, and aliveness through her online sex and relationship school and intimacy retreats in Bali and Mexico. And she is here with us today to unpack the mystery of the female orgasm. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kelly.
I'm so glad you're here. I've been following you on Instagram for quite some time now, and I feel like the energy you bring to sex is how I want to live the rest of my life. And so I wanted to get your insight and then also give it to all the listeners because I find it to be very empowering and also hopeful when you're talking about sex.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for having me today, and so excited to do that. That's my purpose, is to really show people what's possible and for everyone to know it's possible for them. And you've probably heard me speak about what I call the Anami guarantee,
Mhm.
which is that everyone can. So rather than people thinking, oh, I guess some people can do this, or some people can have that kind of orgasm, or some people just have a high libido. Maybe I'm one of those people who doesn't. No, I guarantee that everyone has all these things. Every woman has a high libido. Every woman is multi-orgasmic, can have G spot, cervical squirting orgasms, ejaculate that hits the ceiling. Every woman can shoot ping pong balls with her vagina. These are not just special skill sets that were granted to some and not to others. If a woman isn't having these experiences, there's reasons why, and there's things we can do about it so that everyone can.
I guarantee you, my listeners are now going, oh, I see why she had her on. I want to start with something I read on your website. You say your main message is that everyone ought to be having more sex and better sex, which is kind of what you just said as well. But I want to know, what are the reasons that you think that people are not having good sex in 2025?
I think for the most part, people don't know what they don't know. And if you look at the dominant messaging, what's in media, films, television, rap songs, you see a very superficial, very coarse expression of sexuality, very limited, where I say, look, the big barometric question is, does sex leave you feeling energized, rejuvenated, transformed, euphoric, and like it changed your life?
Hmm.
And if not, then you're doing it wrong. So the truncated, pump and dump kind of encounters we see,
Yeah.
like people have that as a model and they just don't know that, like I said, in my view, sex is meant to be this spiritually expansive, self actualizing, yes, full of deep pleasure, but it's actually meant to up elevate the essence of who you are. That when you're in that kind of relationship of what I call gourmet sex, let's say, versus junk food sex, which is what we typically see presented to us, then your whole life changes, your whole being changes. You
Mm.
become more of the person you're meant to be. And so all of my work is a map of how to do that, right? How do we unlock those places, shift beliefs, remove blockages, whatever is in the way of that guarantee, of that essence coming out that I say we all have.
We're going to break down all of these ways too, by the way, guys. Let's talk about the female orgasm. Let's just jump right in because that's what we said we're here to talk about. But as a sex expert, I'm assuming there are a ton of myths that you are just like, I'm so sick of hearing this. I can't, and that, or that you just want to squash. So, can you break down some of those myths or the things that you hear women coming to you with as the blocks to having these orgasms?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Number one would be that some women can and some women can't,
Yeah.
right? That becomes a default excuse that people give everywhere from the allopathic system to so-called sex experts, like, oh, it's just, don't worry about it. If you can't do it, don't worry about it. There's other things you can do. No, I guarantee every woman can. And we've had women in my work who no longer have a cervix physically, and they can still have cervical orgasms. So if that doesn't give you hope and optimism about what's
Right.
possible for everyone, so there's that. And then a huge focus in my work, especially for women and in the realm of orgasms, is that the vaginal orgasms, and by that I mean G spot, ejaculation, squirting orgasms, and then the queen of them all, the cervical orgasm, are the most important, most potent, life changing orgasms for women. And so, yes, women can have clitoral orgasms, or nipple-gasms, but the most changing, like, transformative ones that you can have, cathartic, self-realizing, are these deeper vaginal ones. And so there are people out there who say, "Oh, there's no such thing as vaginal orgasms," or, "Oh, only clitoral orgasms exist." And I'm like, "Okay, you've basically just told everyone that you've never had these orgasms. Like, tell me this without telling me. You've
Right.
just told." So that's I'd say those are the 2 biggest ones, is that, to make it clear that everyone can, and these do exist, and they're the most important orgasms for women.
When you say everyone can, where did we start? I'm just thinking to myself about all the conversations I've had with my friends, and so many women do say that, like, I just can't, or I've told you before the podcast, I have so many women write into me every time I have a sex expert on and say, I cannot orgasm with a partner. Where did this begin that the female orgasm is just so much tougher to get to than the male orgasm? Because I think a lot of us just associate that mentality with the way that it is.
For whatever reason, I think people who haven't had those deeper experiences, and because they're not formulaic, right?
Mm,
Like, I'd say that the clitoral orgasm and the standard penile orgasm, because there's a spectrum of orgasms for men as well, are pretty easy to bang off, right? They're much more physical, superficial, even lust inspiration will bring those to the finish line. But the
mm,
deeper vaginal orgasms require, as the price of admission, surrender, really being able to let go, be vulnerable, drop your guard, and open up. And that's even if you're doing them solo, and then especially with a partner. And so, if people have never even touched that territory, which happens also through extended time spent, right? Like, women are not likely, unless they're super accomplished and they've had lots of these over their lifetime, to pop these out in a few minutes,
right.
right? And the average sexual encounter is 3 minutes. Men ejaculate, 75% of men ejaculate within 3 minutes. 95% of men ejaculate within 5 minutes. No woman is going to be having G spot, cervical orgasm. She's barely even just gotten a rhythm, and then
Mm,
it's over, right? And so it's this combination of even the people who are supposed to be the experts, who haven't had these experiences in their own life and their own relationships, or they're going off of outdated academic texts that are completely wrong. And they're just spouting information, regurgitating things that they think are correct. So for me, I say that if I had gone to some kind of typical sex school, I'd be broke and unsuccessful, because I would be parroting information that's largely wrong. But for me, this journey really started in my own bed and in my own relationships, where I had all these different orgasms very early on. The first orgasm I ever had was a cervical orgasm. And the only framework I had for even understanding this was, I'd read something that Freud said, which he said actually that the more immature female orgasm is clitoral, and women's internal orgasms are more mature and profound. And that at least gave me some clue, some thread,
mhm.
to kind of make a map of where I was, because I was learning and having all these experiences through my own adventures. And then I later learned about Tantra and Taoism, and that gave me more of a framework where these cultures looked at sex as a spiritual journey, as a way to actually reach states of enlightenment, altered states of consciousness. And so all of that kind of information more reflected what was happening in my own bed and my own relationships, and then me having a really passionate interest in all things holistic, and the idea that we can heal ourselves. We
Mm.
don't need other authorities to do that for us. All of that combined to create the genre of my work of holistic intimacy and sexuality, but this very self empowered approach that we can find all this from within. And we don't need permission from other people. And in fact, most of the time, the messaging that we're given around sexuality from external sources is really flawed and very mutated.
Well, even you mentioning that people are having sex for 3 to 5 minutes, I mean, that just made me gasp when you said that. And I just immediately thought of so many men that I hear saying, my wife never wants to have sex. And I'm like, well, if that's what's happening, no wonder.
That is
That's not even pleasure
100%.
for us.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. If that
Yeah.
is the case and a woman feels that, let's not even like a few times, she's gonna be like, "Look, I have much better things to do, like
Yeah.
pick the lint off my towels and clean the kitty litter would be preferable to
Right.
feeling like you just pump, dumped, and slumped and then fell asleep.
Yeah.
Why would I willingly subject myself to something that feels so abandoning and dismissive?"
Well, ain't it feel I feel like in those scenarios, you would feel just used almost,
Yeah,
and, like,
totally.
I don't know, it just then becomes a job. Like, it's a job that you're like you said, you'd rather go clean the kitty litter. You said the word surrender when you were describing these internal orgasms, and I want to know how much of a female orgasm is mostly physical? Is it how much is tied to emotion? How much is mental? Because I do think that from my experience, at least I should say, I feel like men and women really differ there. And maybe that's not true. And maybe that's just, in some, I don't know, surface level sex situations. But it feels like women do need more of like an emotional connection, or maybe there's some sort of mental and emotional block to these orgasms. Is that accurate?
So it depends on the orgasm. If we're
Okay.
talking about clitoral orgasms, I would say that trajectory is much more similar to a typical penile orgasm,
Okay.
where 80% is physical, 20% is how much you can let go of control. Because I've still met women and worked with women who, even though they have all the right technique, if they're, and by their own description, like they really have a hard time letting go of control and opening themselves, they still will be holding on with a death grip and unable to open up into those experiences. So everything changes when we get inside the vagina. So then I'd say the ratio flips from 80% energetic, being able to open and let go, and 20% technique. So technique, and here's the proof in the pudding, right? Like, for example, let's take the G spot or
Mhm.
squirting. People are fascinated with this, and there's all kinds of information online, tutorials. Okay, if you take your fingers, you come hither, use two fingers, move like this. Okay, great. So, why aren't all women having these orgasms? If it
Right.
was just about technique, why isn't that happening? Obviously, it's because there's another or several factors at play. And the
Mm,
main one being the ability to open and let go. And so surrender is huge. And if people have, let's say, a history of sexual trauma that they've never cleared within themselves, that's going to show up as restriction, as holding back. Sometimes it literally shows up as what I call a vagina on lockdown, right?
mhm.
Where the vagina refuses to even be penetrated. And it's instead of, so the allopathic world, and this is even gross to articulate this, but they'd be like, here's this stretcher we're going to give you for your vagina to help you force it open. And that's
Mhm.
so much just re traumatizing and not even finding the source of the problem. Where years ago, and I discovered this again, like in my own practice, is working with women who had these issues. They had a history of trauma that they'd never cleared. And so, of course, the body being as wise and trying to help us as it is like, bitch, don't come in here until you've
Right.
solved this problem, right? Like
Yeah.
the door is closed until you can heal. There's things that need healing. I'm not feeling well. And if you can heal that, door opens up. And that's what I saw in my work then, right? Is when we would address these issues on a deeper level, women could then open up even to being penetrated, to
Mhm.
feeling pleasure, and then later to these orgasms. So it's like this process, and this comes down to that thing of like the body is my ally and not
Mhm.
my adversary. These things aren't just random things that have happened to me for whatever reason, as in, oh, I have this ailment, I have this problem. It's like, no, the body is actually giving us these clear messages. This needs to be healed, this needs to be alchemized and resolved before you can attain these states of pleasure and openness. And rightfully so. The body is guarded and tensed up against threat, against violation, until we tell it otherwise, until we help to heal it and integrate whatever's happened.
Which actually is such a beautiful thing. Like you were just
Yeah.
saying, I'm really trying to switch the narrative around body stuff as I get older because I feel like we have this mentality of we have a symptom of something and we just want to get rid of that symptom and we're mad at our bodies for having it.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's the deeper message here? And there always is one, right? Like I love what you're saying about the trauma and our vagina being on lockdown, but like, wouldn't it be? And that's your body trying to keep you safe. So it's
Yeah.
doing the right thing based on
Yeah.
your history, which is a beautiful thing. You just have to tell it that was then, this is now kind of thing in whatever ways that you do that.
Exactly, and find ways to, somatic healing, actual
Sure.
healing through the body. And we've had women do this healing work. Like I suggest a whole range of techniques, but one woman who did my work, we have a really beautiful podcast called Healing Sexual Trauma with the Jade Yoni Egg. And if you know, using a jade egg is a big part of the work that I do with women. So she had been violated and she had this similar thing. She couldn't touch herself. She couldn't even put her
Mm,
fingers in her own vagina because it was all connected to this
mhm,
past trauma that she had. And so she decided, okay, she was going to work with the egg and to make it more of a process, every day she set a timer. Like she could barely touch herself without getting a panic attack,
mm,
right? So she would set a timer for 30 seconds of touching herself using the jade egg in her yoni, and then she would stop. The next day, she would increase that to 1 minute. The next day, a minute and 30 seconds. And she did that so methodically, so diligently that she was able to shift the energy there and heal that and alchemize it to the point where she had severe endometriosis, like paralytic, extreme pain, and tried even all these natural approaches, herbal methods, all kinds of different treatments. It evaporated her endometriosis as she moved through this process of reconciling and healing her vagina and her psyche.
right.
All of her symptoms disappeared and didn't come back. And this is another beautiful expression of the body showing us through some kind of symptom, reproductive wise, there's something amiss. Something is out of balance that needs deeper healing. And even all of your most holistic methods, which I still support as an adjunct, I just don't think they're the core healing apparatus, right? It's deeper, energetic, emotional, psychological, spiritual. She addressed all that, and then the physical symptoms just gone. She went back to her treatment physician, and they were like, "I don't know how to explain it," but she's like, "Well, I do.
Yeah. She's like,
Let
I
me
got
tell
you.
you."
That's sometimes where I go, to like Western medicine because we're not looking at the root, and the root
Yeah,
is everything. That's all the answers.
yeah,
Wow, that is crazy. I was going to you just answered multiple questions for me in one, but I was gonna ask you if there was one specific place you would say to start. If someone is listening and they're just really identifying with maybe even not even being able to have an orgasm at all, like even by themselves, like this woman you mentioned couldn't even touch herself without having a panic attack, which
yeah.
I think is probably more common than I would like to believe. So is there one specific thing? Is it like a jade egg? Is it loving touch? Is it hugs? Is it, you know what I mean?
Look, I would say 2 things. One, yes, the jade egg is an amazing self-knowledge tool and then also works to bring sensation, strength, reconnection into the whole vagina, which is what we wanna do. And at the same time, I would say I call it yoni reconnaissance, right? So rather than touching yourself with the immediate intention of achieving orgasm,
Mm,
it's touching yourself with the intention of healing, exploration, reconnection, getting to know every little nook and cranny of yourself, right? So you could call that yoni reconnaissance, yoni massage. I have some great videos on that on my YouTube channel for people to check out, but you're really looking at how do I awaken? How do I reconnect? The orgasm will come. If you build
yeah.
it, it will come. But the foundation for building that is if you're numb, if you're disconnected, if you have all these neural pathways which have been mutated through some kind of traumatic experiences, which, look, to one degree or another, we all have,
Sure.
whether it was some kind of like comment about your vagina or a
Mhm.
relationship that had some bad energy in it. or to outright abuse, we all have layers of it, right? And so the more work that we can do to alchemize these things, the more clear the channel is, the more sensation we have, the more connected we are. Dissociation comes out of trauma, right? It comes
Mhm.
out of things we don't want to look at. And why would we want to look at? Although at some point that's the price of admission, right? Is we have
Yeah.
to alchemize and go through some face the demons, right? Go demon hunting and face these things and slay them so that we can then rise above and repattern ourselves or reset ourselves to our original settings of bliss and pleasure, which again, that's the Anami guarantee, is that within all of us is this indestructible, pure place that can experience all of these things. If we're not there yet, and sometimes it might feel like we're really far away from it, it's just because there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in the way of connecting to that. And then
Mhm.
the work is to move through that and clear it. It's like feng shui, like
Yeah.
sexual and relationship feng shui.
I love the reconnecting to pleasure because I do think that's one of the main things women have been robbed of over time in association with sex. Like, whether it felt like a job for so many years, or our pleasure wasn't really the focus, like, I think a male's pleasure has been more of the focus universally when we're talking about sex for so long, and so reconnecting to pleasure in a slow way sounds like a beautiful thing to me. If anyone is listening, I know you talk about the jade egg a lot on your Insta, but if people are listening and they don't follow you yet, can you just give some descriptions of what the jade egg does?
Yeah. So this was a practice. I mentioned Taoism and Tantra, and these are 5,000-year-old studies where they looked at this the spiritual and sexual coming together. How do we use our sexual energy in a way to attain higher states of consciousness within ourselves? And they had all kinds of practices to do that. And one of the main practices in the Taoist studies was for women was using a jade egg. So it's a piece of jade carved into the shape of an egg. There's a hole drilled through it that you put a string through. The egg goes up inside the vagina, and then you're using weight on the other end of it so that you have feedback and resistance. And then you build muscle, articulation, sensation within the vagina, just like you would in an exercise routine lifting weights at the gym.
Mhm.
So when people are told to, I don't know if they're told this anymore, but they used to be told to do their Kegels.
Yeah.
So Kegels, the way we're taught them, are just clenching your vagina at random in the wind. And that's basically like doing a bicep in the air, right? A bicep curl with no weight. It doesn't do anything because
Mhm.
there's no resistance. So if you have an object, you pick up a 5 pound barbell, right? And you start pressing it. Dumbbell, barbell, I always get them mixed up. Um, barbell's the long one, dumbbell's the short one. Um, then you're actually looking for that sweet spot of enough exertion that you have to put out effort versus it being too heavy that you can't even lift it up, right? You want to find that exact spot of resistance. And that's the exact same thing with vaginal weightlifting with the jade egg. And so, yes, I'm out there lifting coffee tables and surfboards and chandeliers, but you don't need to do that to get the benefits. You can start very slowly with like a bag of crystals, or a few crystals and work your way up. And you never even need to get to the coffee table territory. I do that to prove a point. But all of this brings you back that connection. It builds strength, just like any other muscle of the body. It actually needs working out. And when people get,
Mhm.
60% of women have urinary incontinence. 50% of women after childbirth have pelvic organ prolapse of some kind. Something's wrong, right? Your
Right.
organs are not meant to fall out of your body. The reason they are falling out is because your pelvic floor is weak. Your pelvic
Mhm.
bowl is not strong enough to support them, right? So, and if women are told to quote do their Kegels and they're just squeezing their muscles, it's doing nothing.
Mhm.
So we clearly have a massive epidemic of lack of pelvic floor strength and simple exercise. And so the bizarre treatments that the OBGYN world gives is let's sew a piece of plastic inside your vagina instead of telling women to just go home and exercise their vaginas for a few minutes a day. Right? It's heinous, the kind barbaric and
Yeah.
insane stupid. some of the things, frankly, most of the things that women are told to do from that sector of, so-called medicine.
Mhm,
Whereas these simple, self-empowering things you can do on your own solutions actually work and they have permanent results.
mm. Okay, so we kind of mentioned that men's pleasure was more prioritized publicly, I think, than women's. So, how do we reframe that? Like, if a woman is really focused on her partner's pleasure, because I think as women too, we do want our partners to be happy and pleased during sex, of course. But how do we shift the narrative in our own head to not sacrificing our own pleasure for that sake? Like, what is one of the first steps that we could take as women to really prioritizing our own pleasure?
Well, first of all, would be I agree that there's this focus on men, like even like I said, media, films, TV. What
Yeah.
do you see? You see a 30-second encounter where the guy definitely has an orgasm and the woman, maybe, maybe not,
And it's
right?
never
It's like,
even mentioned. I always think
no,
that's so weird. It's like we see the
yeah,
guy have the orgasm and then
yeah.
the scene ends. And you're like, but what about her?
And why is that? Why is that
Don't
constantly reinforced to us, right? All the time, right? So we're getting this messaging all the time. So, and also the message that men are more sexual than women. Women are
right.
more emotional, men are more sexual. Women
Yeah.
really need to be coerced into having sex. They're not that sexual beings. Okay, this is where I'm going to do a full 180 and say women are insatiable. The natural state of women is complete insatiability. What happens when a man has an orgasm?
He goes and takes a
Typically,
nap.
right. When a woman has an orgasm, she can have another, it's like that DJ Khaled, another one,
Yeah.
and another one, and another one. It is endless. She
Yes.
has no limit. So,
Yeah.
when men joke like, "Oh, they need a few girls," I'm like, "Bitch, you couldn't handle a few girls." It's
No.
women who can handle not that I'm promoting this as as like a preferable option, but in theory, women are the ones who could handle multiple men
Mhm.
where men can't even handle one woman. It's like, one ejaculation and they're boom down for the count. They have hours to recover, the average guy. So, there's that to start with, is that women actually are very innately sexual beings, and there's a whole amount of programming out there telling them that they aren't. And the whole Madonna whore programming,
Mhm.
right? So women are either sluts or they're virgins, and there isn't really this happy medium of a voracious, healthy, sensual woman. You have to create that. So that's part of it, is just even looking at the programming that you've been given and thinking, okay, do I buy into this? And you might, because it might have been your life experience thus far. So, having what I've said earlier, the conscious self exploration practice, a yoni egg routine, and then as you build that connection, it moves more into self pleasuring, meaning as you start to get to know yourself and experience pleasure, you denumb, then you go more actively into the ascent and uh, pursuit of these orgasms, right? And then as you start to have them, you nourish yourself. There's a term that I call, that I've coined, the well fucked woman, which
Mhm.
is that when a woman is truly satiated and activating her sexual energy, she changes, right? She goes from being what guys might think of as like a naggy girlfriend, or a bitchy girlfriend. I'm like, yeah, you're just not fucking her well enough if that's what you've got. It's
That is
actually
the
your
biggest comeback of all times. Well, sorry you didn't fuck me well enough.
Yeah. 100%. It's so accurate. Because if a woman is being fully sexually satisfied to the height of her potential, which is a lot, you need a beast of a man to
Yeah.
actually satisfy a woman, then she is your biggest ally, supporter. She's easygoing, she's generous, she's kind. She's going to drop to her knees and give you blowjobs all the time because she appreciates you for fucking the shit out of her and activating this confidence, this superpower,
Mhm.
this beautiful feminine energy that all awakens in her when she is a well fucked woman. An underfucked woman is going to be the opposite. She's yelling at shop clerks. She's freaking out at people in traffic, right? She's going to humiliate her man in public and berate
Mhm.
him in front of friends and family. Like, you have not seen the start of this yet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you pump chumped me, you're done. And this isn't even conscious, right? They're just doing this stuff, and they both don't know consciously. He thinks she's a bitch, she just gets so irritated and resentful at
Yep.
him, but it's really he is not fucking her well enough and has no idea how to. And she doesn't even realize because she's been given no permission to be this massive sexual goddess that she truly is inwardly. And then they're like the blind leading the blind, right? And so much of my work is, again, like showing people what's possible. This is really the natural state of things, is that he's doing his job to make sure that you're always satisfied, beyond satisfied. And then you, in turn, gift him with all the radiance of your true feminine
Mhm.
energy. And that supports and nourishes him like a superpower. He becomes turbocharged with that energy that you now give back to him. And then we have the beautiful cycle of yin and yang the way it was always meant to be. That's how we're meant to be existing together.
That makes so much sense to me. I've never thought of it that way, but and almost when you were talking, I was thinking it's just almost like a respect that comes from being a well fucked woman because when you're there, the partner, you look at your partner and you want more. Like you said, you're insatiable. So that means all the things that you want to gift to him because you respect how he's gifting to you. I love the yin and yang like idea there too, because we never talk about that, and that is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a beautiful harmony, and the core of that is through sex, right?
Yeah.
And that's another issue is this idea that, oh, sex is a small part of a relationship. It's not the most important thing. No, it actually is. It's the core, it's the glue, it is your secret superpower connection that you have with each other. You go into that liminal sexual space, you have these deep spiritual, otherworldly, cosmic experiences. And then you emerge out into the world as these superheroes, as a superpower couple, I call it, right? Where you've activated these energies and skills and talents and traits in each other that you've lit up through the
Mhm.
potency of your connection. And that's what I mean. You become the best versions of yourselves. And the secret is your bed. That's where it all happens. That's where the
Mhm.
magic happens. The
Mhm.
alchemy, the full fusing of yin and yang energy, that coming together to
Mhm.
come out into the world, to come into your states of consciousness and your true selves.
So that's with a partner. You talk a lot about self-pleasure too, and I'm also thinking about people who might not be in a relationship listening to this. What is the importance of self-pleasure? Because I truly still talk to some women who just don't do it at all. They have no relationship with themselves in that capacity. And I've always found that to be a little, like, I don't even know what to say when that comes up, but it feels like it has to be a block of some sort. Is that accurate? Does everyone need to be doing this? Like what's the relationship to self-pleasure with all of the stuff that we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, with the block idea, I do think that's true. I think the origin of that could be for some people, it's even religious, where there were
Oh, yeah.
strong ideas around not ever touching yourself, and there's
Mhm.
there's issues with that. So it could just be that a belief that you've taken in, or it could be negative experiences. Let's say you were in a relationship that felt violating sexually, even if it wasn't a full abuse situation, but even a partnership where there was a lot of ick. There was a lot
Yeah.
of duty sex, a lot of obligatory sex. And you're kind of like, you don't wanna touch that. You don't wanna go, into those places in your body
Mhm.
because you don't feel good about them. So that's part of it, and then that takes some conscious examination to acknowledge where that may have came from, and then a leap of faith of, say, me telling someone, "Okay, look, these are the keys to the queendom, and your own self-knowledge and connection is really the foundational part of rebirthing yourself as a healthy, sensual being." So, yes, having a self-pleasuring practice when you're single is really important because that energy, okay, sexual energy is life force energy, right?
Right.
It's the energy that creates new life. And if you're not making babies with it or you're not in a partnership, it's still important to stay connected to that energy and use it as a rejuvenating, creative power in your life. And so when people talk about being celibate, Usually the way that's practiced is people are celibate without any kind of sexual contact or thoughts, or they're trying, and then we see where that leads, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the highest percentage of abuse in an institution ever? It's
Has to be the
people who've
Catholic
been
Church.
forced, people who've
Yeah.
been forced to be celibate,
Yeah.
right? So the correct way to be celibate if you don't have a partner is self-pleasuring in a conscious way, in a devoted way, I'm gonna get to know myself and connect to this energy and learn how to use it in my life,
Mm.
learn who I am as a sensual being. And then that energy that you start to play with, it changes you, right? You can have that well fucked woman aura even as a single person. And we have countless stories of women where they were self pleasuring the night before, had a great experience with themselves. They go out into public in sweats, flip flops, hair back in a bun, no makeup, glasses, and they get hit on relentlessly, like
Mhm.
pumping gas and then run across the parking lot to beg for their phone number, and they're like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
I'm looking could not look anymore, like, put together. And these guys, because they're feeling you're now radiating this aura of beauty, of femininity, of magnetism that is literally drawing people to you on this energetic level and imbuing you with a kind of beauty. And that's being a well fucked woman. And so then when you're in that place, how easy is it going to be for you to attract a partner? Right?
Right.
So much easier. If you're contracted and inward and like hunched
Mhm.
over and like I'm cut off from this energy, no one's going to touch that. Or if they are, they're going to be at the same level of you, which could be semi traumatized in a frozen state, not dealing with their stuff, very easily triggered and activated. You don't want that. You
Right.
want to up level yourself and come to a new vibration, a new frequency, and attract somebody from there. Right. And look, we're all works in progress. No one's
Sure.
ever fully healed, ever. There's always another level to go. In fact, that's what the word Anami means in Sanskrit. It means there's always another level to go
Mhm.
in healing. You never reach a static place of you're done. It's okay. Here's your
You've
gold,
gotten here,
your
yeah.
gold trophy. You're good. Like, no, it's never like that. So you don't have to be like perfect and, think you're ready, but you have to put in some effort to get that energy revved up and
Mhm.
generating a field, an auric field that then draws people into you. And you'll know you're ready because the men will start to come. If you
Yeah.
build it, they will come, right? It's like you start putting
It's
that
the
work
field of
into your
dreams, baby.
the building. And they just start dropping out of the sky. Like
It
I
is
have
so
nothing
true, though. It is truly this I've experienced this as well. It is so true.
Like, I have nothing against dating apps per se, the whole online thing. I've never
Sure.
done them, but the reason why is because I know that when I'm in that state, the men just come from all over the place. Even, and that's to me is the best barometer to know, okay,
Mm.
I'm ready because I've been doing this inner work, literally inner work, and these men are just showing up, right?
Yeah.
Without any effort. I'm not seeking them out, like parking lots, grocery stores, elevator, where, like anywhere is possible because your energy is magnetizing them in.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that we're never fully healed. It's always a work in progress. And would imagine too that could incorporate so many of the different things that we go through in life. There's seasons of things. Like sometimes you're in a really great season and things are just flowing and easy. And maybe those are easier times to have sex. And then sometimes you're struggling and it's not always like the best energetically for you. And one of the conversations that I keep having with a lot of my friends is menopause. I'm 43 and I'd mentioned this to you before the podcast because you speak about menopause in a way that I've never heard anyone else talk about it in relation to sex. Because so many of my friends are starting to be like, I have no sex drive. I don't want to be touched, and like we're also at the same time having all these menopause symptoms. And you speak about it in a way of like, if you're having sex, you're not going to have these symptoms. So, can you talk about this a little bit and what your mentality about menopause is?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, my view is that all, and I mean all, reproductive ailments, symptoms, things that are out of balance. So, that means everything from PMS to difficult periods to challenging menopause. growths and cysts, low libido, PCOS, endometriosis, all of it, like I referenced that woman example earlier, all of it has a preceding cause, meaning some kind of emotional, mental imbalance. That these
Mhm.
are not periods were not meant to be difficult. Menopause was not meant to be a struggle. We're not meant to be getting, growths on the body. These are all expressions of stuck energy and unresolved issues. And when we resolve them, then they evaporate. It's that easy. So over the decades of me doing this work, I've had, countless women in the menopausal process. And now there's this huge focus on perimenopause, which
Mhm.
honestly, 20 years ago, I don't even know where that word came from,
Yeah, it
right?
didn't even
It's like
exist.
getting
Yeah.
people on the train even earlier and earlier. So, um, when things and they've gone through menopause with nary a blip on the radar, meaning if they are well-fucked women or they're going through this process of learning about these things in my work and applying them, they don't have a single symptom. The only thing that happens is their period stops. They're wet as can be, they're lubricating, libido is still crazy high, like to the point where they have to bring like extra pairs of panties with them because they're soaking through them in the day because they get excited and they're wet all the time. Like things that, you know, and not a single the only thing that shifts is they just stop bleeding. That's it. And in my view, that is how it's supposed to happen is a transition. Now, the reason I think why so many women are experiencing the opposite is one, they might have already had challenging periods and
Mhm.
PMS, right? And so that's just going to carry on through menopause. Why would that change? Also, and the main reason is because they're underfucked. They're
Mhm.
not having this level of life-changing, transformative sex that I say is the default and the norm for every woman, or ought to be the norm for every woman. And when they do, so I've even had women come through my work in the middle of difficult menopause, right? So they are having hot flashes, they are having um, lubrication issues, and they start applying these principles and they shift it. And they don't want to go on hormones, right? They're
Right.
coming to me because I'm saying you can do it without hormones. I'm saying that prescribing women hormones for a natural state of their life is really I think it's actually snake oil, to be honest. Like,
Mm.
I am shocked that so many practitioners, even those seemingly in a more natural place, are recommending that for women because it's really saying, I have zero faith in in the human woman body, and that I think it only can survive by being heavily medicated. Like, what the fuck kind of rationale is that? I feel embarrassed for these people that they think that and they're doing this to women and the karmic load that they're getting for that. Like,
Mm.
how can you think that? So when women are sexually connected, they literally glide through. It's like it lubricates the entire process. So perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, no hormones, no lube, don't need to go shopping at Ann Taylor, like you don't have to do any of those things. You can still be a sexy, voracious, multi-orgasmic, wet, 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 wetter than wet. We have this one of my favorite quotes ever from one of our female clients is like, what did she say? A tsunami of wetness is
I
what she's
saw that on your
experiencing.
website. I mean, I think that's goals, right? That sounds amazing, and so it's so interesting. I love what you're saying, though, about I just hate how our culture just throws a pill at everything, and I've never felt right and again, I'm not fully in any of these symptoms, so I don't know how I'll feel at a different time, but I've never felt right about getting on hormones. I did hormone treatment with some infertility stuff, and I was like, "What am I" knew before I did it, it wouldn't work for my body. I did it, I hated it, and I was so right, I should have listened to my body. It was so harsh, and it doesn't feel good to my body, and so I wish I would have listened in hindsight, but that's how I feel going into this stage of life is like, I don't wanna throw any more of that into my body. I would rather treat it with food or natural ways if I need some help, but I just the being well fucked seems like a better option too. Like, how can that make it worse?
It's the best option. We have this interview. Oh, she's from the South. Have you seen that one, my podcast? It's 61 rich and ass fucked across Alabama.
Look up the
It's
website. I have to watch it now. I haven't seen that one yet.
Her name is Michelle, and she is amazing, and she was in, like a not great marriage for like 40 years.
Yeah.
And she was 59 or 60. And who does that? Who gets a divorce at that
The
age, right?
bold
Like the
move,
amount,
especially from the
yes.
South. Yeah.
Oh, like, so courageous. She does it. She gets finds my work, dives into it, and then within a year or 9 months or something, she'd met this man, and they start having the most epic relationship, of her life. And she said she used to need to have buckets of lube, like, by her bedside, And now nothing. Like, they are having sex left, right, and center all over the house, like, through hours-long sex date, not a drop of lube is ever used.
Wow.
And no hot like, none of these symptoms that she's yeah, like,
Right.
her friends have gone through all this stuff, and she's like, "No, hasn't gone through any of it." So it's completely possible, and like
Mhm.
I said, I think that and now that I've seen it enough women going through it to think, okay, to say confidently, "This is the answer, and this is the answer that everybody else is missing." So I appreciate other advice out there around, like, working out and high protein and, like,
Sure.
all yeah,
Yeah.
valid information, great support, but people on that are, by and large, always still taking hormones. That's always a part of
Mm.
these people's protocols, and that's where I'm like, "No, you guys are snake oil salespeople
Mhm.
because you don't need it." If you're having amazing, life-changing sex, that trumps everything. Those hormones that you're generating, if we wanna even look at it that way, right? Through orgasm, through pleasure, all of these high quality, powerful hormones you're generating from within. And so they're going through the body and they're supporting whatever transition might happen. If people want to say to me, oh, but you lose this hormone and that, and like, okay, can we just think for a moment that the human body going through this thing that all women go through has a natural way to reconfigure itself and
Right.
to make it work without needing exogenous supplements, hormones for the rest of our lives? Like, how is that logical? Like, that's the part that I get confused by. I'm like, how do you think that's more logical than thinking that somehow your body has a means to do this naturally? We just have to figure it out. And the
Right.
obvious and the clear and the actual answer is our sexual energy. But all these people, then, which again, to me, they're just admitting that they're sexually inexperienced and underfucked, that they've never actually had these deeper orgasms. They've never actually had these transcendent sexual experiences. Because if they did, they would realize that that's going to quantum leap propel them into this other dimension where they're like, menopause? Meno what? What are you even
Right.
talking about?
Right.
Right? Like, I don't even, like, what? There are cultures in the world who don't even have a word for for menopause because it's not a thing. It's a very North American thing. It's a very manufactured thing. That part of it, I think, is even the brainwashing and the preparation. Like, this fear and
Yeah.
loathing and programming that you're fucked, like you can't escape. It's like, it's crazy. So and then now, like, like the perimenopause thing is now like, oh no, you're not used. Now there's another 10 years you have to worry about
Yep.
that you could be suffering for. And if you think about it, right, like the allopathic aim with women is to have women on hormonal birth control from puberty until death, right?
Mhm.
You're now, they suggest going on the birth control pill for even acne, age 14
They
before you've even
suggest it
had
for
sex.
menopause symptoms now, like,
Right.
or period problems.
Yeah.
I can't do birth control either. It's another thing my body does not like.
Yeah. So then you do that, and then people try to have children. And if they've been on hormonal birth control for their whole life, their body doesn't know how to produce regular
Mhm.
hormones. So they end up going through IVF, maybe successful, maybe not. And then by the time they've had some babies, then it's time, oh, now you're in perimenopause. So now you can go on these hormones. Like, again, does that really make sense logically that women are meant to be medicated their entire lives?
I
Like, if we were
mean,
in the future looking back at this, we would consider this a barbaric time when we did
sure.
these kinds of crazy things to women.
Well, it also, if you think about it, the only people that benefit are the people that make money off of that. Sex is free.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I always think that about these things with, like, menopause or whatever the buzzword is. It just feels like it's great that we have Western medicine for a lot of things, but at the same time, it does get overdone to me where everything there's a pill to solve it, but you're only solving the symptom. You're not even looking at the root. And then we're not looking at why we even got into the place that we got. You know, like why are these symptoms so bad? Why is my period so bad? Is it stuff that I'm eating? And you know, like there's all these things that we don't do in our culture, in the North American culture, I guess I should say, that I think contribute to all of these factors that we're talking about.
100%. And that's the thing about the allopathic world. It's like there's no emphasis on personal responsibility. Like, what have I done? What have my lifestyle choices? What have I made that could have created this situation? And then also that they are the intermediary. It's like having a priest between you and God. It's having the
Mm,
doctor between you and your body. The emphasis is never about you. How can I help you to learn your own body
to
more and
connect. Yeah.
reconnect with it? It's no, I'm the expert, outsource all your power to me and I'll give you a pill. Yeah, doesn't even fix it. It just temporarily usually replaces one symptom for another, right?
Mhm.
You get rid of this, but now you've got this.
Mhm. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I do want to touch on men for just a second. And because I know there's some men who are listening, or maybe some wives that are listening that are going to send it to their man. But what can men do if they are like, I want my woman to be well fucked? Like, where do they learn? You know, I don't know that there's that many resources for men either. So, what would be one suggestion you have to give to men who want their partner to be in this situation that we're talking about as a well fucked woman, but don't really know where to start?
So, my programs, I have Vaginal Kung Fu, which is the jade egg, coming together for couples, how to be a well fucked woman, sexual mastery for men, and then I have Sexy Mama, which is a holistic pregnancy and orgasmic birth program. So, I have two programs that are set up for men. I love working with men and teaching. And there's so much out there, and there's so many earnest men out there who
I
really
think
do
so
want to
too.
learn. So they can sign up for my programs. If you haven't already, my Orgasmic Enlightenment podcast has tons of content for men, women, couples, singles. So you can start listening to that. That's free. My Instagram often has tons of information on it as well. There's so much free content there. And then depending on the relationship, right? Like
Mm,
sometimes one person is more committed to growth and the other person is less. It's ideal if both people are excited and ready to just jump into this work, and then you can do it together, whether that's signing up for a program together or listening to a podcast together and then
mhm,
talking about it afterward, letting that start the conversation. Um, or if the partner is less on board, then you start the process. You invite them, but you start doing that work on your own. And then usually that elicits shifts in you that the partner picks up on. And they're like intrigued by, oh, like, what's going on
mhm.
over there? So it's really that initial education piece that I said before, like, what do I knowing what you don't know and just listening to these episodes, hearing interviews from what we call our well fucked all stars like Michelle, people who've had these epic experiences with applying this work in their lives, seeing what's possible, right? To start to open your mind to, okay, things can be so much different than what I thought. There is hope. There is a reason to be wildly optimistic and to also then remember the Anami guarantee. They did it, you can do it. All the things I talk about, every single one of them is available to every person.
It's available to every person. I just love that mentality. Well, Kim Anami, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming on. And I'm going to put all of her information in the description of this podcast. So you guys go follow along. The podcast is great. Instagram is great. Like I said, I've been following for years. So I've learned a ton. And you can see Kim lifting all sorts of stuff with her vagina, which is fascinating in and of itself. So go check all of that out. And thank you so much again for being here.
It's a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation, Kelly. Thank you for having me.